Hello everyone. If you want to go to my free course, type henry-ward.co.uk into Google, then go to Henry Ward Trading, and then this here is my free course. Click on Start Today. If you want to go on to the webinars that I do every Sunday and every Wednesday, click on Trading Academy and then click on Start Today. So this is the Trading Academy. This is the full training, the webinars, direct access to me, everything that you want.
Hello everyone, how are you? Anyone who is watching this is not live anymore. It is now being posted in the chat group and it is also being posted on YouTube. So anyone who wants to continue to get this, subscribe to YouTube or make sure you're a member of the Discord group. Now, we talked about beds, bats, and beyond. We talked about Wall Street bets. We talked about this being pushed up, escalated up with the likes of the Wall Street bet traders, came up to this level, and we talked about shorting this off this particular level. I know a couple of people off the chat group took the short, and I also know that their target was $10. So if you had taken that and held fire till it hit the $10, well done, absolutely great trade. Depending on where you enter this, whether you entered there with a limit order, your stop loss there, you have 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1 on this. Absolutely really good trade. And I took it. Is it a conventional trade? Nope. Why? In the sense that it's massively rallied up and then we're looking for it to absolutely capitulate. So it's not something that we would normally trade, but we had a pretty decent horizontal whole way through there. The value of this was massively overpriced. And then once we hit this sort of level, we had a drop. But also one of the major stakeholders who own about 17% of the company also sold at that level and meant that they had something like a 10, 15 million pound profit because they got in at an average price of about $23, between $23.18 and $23, as far as I remember from reading. And then they got out somewhere up around here, so which is very beneficial for them, but also worked out really well for anyone who was shorting that. So well done. Keep up the good work. Over on to the Nasdaq. So we had a trade on the Nasdaq. We were looking for this to come back, phase 2, come back into this area, look pretty decent. We had a pretty decent price action bar, and then the Federal Reserve, Jeremy Powell, come out with a statement, and then straight after the statement, this is what happened. The market completely capitulated. The market 100% disagreed with what he was saying, and the sellers took over at this particular point. And this is something that this is sort of a new phenomenon with the likes of the indices. We are in a point where they are quite volatile towards news at the moment, where as a general rule, we've never really gotten that. We've never really gotten that sort of volatility that trigger happiness on the likes of the news before, but that's what we have in this new sort of region at the moment. So we've had a little drop down, we've had this sort of little low test bar, and then today's futures market is slightly up. But for me, this has to come back to one of those levels, probably that blue line. So we have 1, 2, 3 touches there through that area. Also there is 4, 5. So for me, it has to come back to that level there before I'm looking for this to happen. So it has to, for me, if it takes off here, this is not a trade for me. This is not something I'm looking to jump into. Now I'm hoping it goes up, but I would like it to come back maybe 1, maybe 2 days further. And then if it comes back, then I'm looking to jump in. That would be the ideal scenario on that particular trade. S&P 500. So the S&P 500 has come down to this trend line. Now, when you look at this, I'll go back further. So again, we had this sort of trade here. It triggered us in, and then the same outcome came on the announcements from the Fed. So delete, get rid of that. So we are now back on this trend line here. Now you could argue, oh, that's a really nice trend line, but problem is that trend line could be there as well. That's the problem with the likes of this. It is so subjective, trend lines, and the same with sort of horizontal lines, but they're probably less subjective. So yes, I'm looking at this and going, oh, this looks really nice, but the problem, it look really nice there, it look even better there, because we'd expect that to come back down to this horizontal. It looked nice there as well. So don't be looking at this trend line and go, ooh, that's a good trade. It may or may not be a good trade. I zoom out and have a quick look. We do have a very soft level there. We do have a very soft level there, but again, it's not massively jumping out of this. There's not anything for me to say, yes, this is the trade. So for me, this has to come back down again to that level. And hopefully that's the point there, where the trend line and the horizontal line come together. But again, we've had this sort of low test bar. We've now had the buyers sort of come in here, so it may not come back down that far. We may not get a rejection down that far. We may get the buyers jump in here, or the buyers may come back up to here, and then the sellers take over again. Be very careful when you're buying this now at the minute, because we can see when the sellers come together, there's pretty big selling power on this. So just be aware of that. Is this a bullish market at the minute? No, there's probably about 60-40 still selling power in the market at the moment. So we have to shake out that extra 10% and get it into a 50-50 market. So at the minute, we can see when it starts going down, there's pretty big selling pressure on this. Onto the Dow. And again, the Dow is identical. There's also a trend line up through there that we could get. But I'm not sticking it in because it's too subjective. We have sort of broken that horizontal level there. It was a decent one through that area. Now, there probably is one somewhere close to there, but I only have sort of the one touch there. Let's come back and retest it. So again, it's very soft, it's very light. I grab that and pop that down there. So that's what I'm talking about there. A bounce and then retest. Now, is that strong enough for me to take this trade? No. But does it look like it's going to go up? Yes. Now, again, remember this green bar is the future market, so it hasn't opened as of yet. So entry slightly above it. So that is there 1.9 to 1. Let's see where our 3 to 1 is. So there's our 3 to 1. A double top would be a 3 to 1 on that. So the question is, again, are you happy that this market is now going to turn? And looking at this, it looks like it is. But again, anything could happen during the day. Anything could happen. Absolutely. So just make sure you are aware of what's going on. Make sure you're aware of the information that's there. Make sure that you're keeping an eye out, making sure there's no big news alerts coming out if this is going up, if this is going on. There's nothing jumping out at you. There's nothing telling us that this should be a trade that we're looking at, or that there's nothing telling us that this trade should go in the opposite direction. But is this a level? No, it's not a strong enough level for me to be trading off. This here is a much better one. So when we look at the Nasdaq, theoretically, I needed to go down to here. The S&P, I needed to go down to here. And the Dow, I'm looking for it to drop down to here before I'm looking to trade it. Now, some people will take this and they will get lucky and it'll be a good trade. Some of you will take this, you'll be unlucky. It pops up, triggers you in, and then comes back down to here. So they're the two scenarios I would expect to happen on this. And it's in no man's land for me, so it's not something I'm looking to trade. It has to come down to one of these levels. German DAX. So anyone that took either of these two trades here, well done. I know some of you guys took this smaller trade here on the smaller time frame. You took that retest on the smaller time frame that we talked about. Well done. Look, there was another retest here and then popped back down again. This one would have been a little more aggressive because would have been looking at this for a bounce to the upside. But again, the news announcement and it's sort of hit the sell-off. Again, similar here, we had this low test bar. And again, for me, it's in no man's land. It hasn't hit the floor. It hasn't hit anything like that. And then we've had a buying day today. So for me, this is one that I'm happy to miss. What I would be looking for on this particular one is for us to have a break and retest on the smaller time frame. So that's what I'll be looking for on this. The break and retest on the smaller time frame. If that happens, so we're now looking, we're in the phase one here. So just imagine we drop down to the smaller time frame here now onto the 4 hour. So we're now expecting this now to continue going up. So what I want is a phase one, then a phase two onto this floor, and then we're looking for the new phase one to start. So that's where I would be looking on this particular one, looking for a sort of a break and retest here. Now it could make a higher high here. That would be the ideal scenario, to make a higher high here and then come back down. But it doesn't necessarily have to. Now, this again, if you think there was more upside than down. If there's more downside, you look at this as a level here to short. So it depends on what your outlook is here. If you're looking at this, there's phase one, phase two, phase one, phase two. There's a short here of this level, bounce, retest, entry below it, stop loss above it. So if you think there's more downside, then you have a short here. But if you are bullish on this, look for break and retest. So I think there's a little more upside than downside on this. I think most of the downside has happened, but again, it's I can't guarantee that. Let's see how it plays out. French CAC. So anyone that took this short, well done. You had a nice little winner. French CAC again popped down below that level, didn't bounce, didn't respect it. So then there's not a whole lot I can do on this one. Again, because of the gapping, I will stay away from this. It's not something that I'm looking to trade. UK 100 came back here absolutely exquisitely, came back down to this level here, did exactly as we wanted it in a big, huge selling bar. Now the question is that did anyone take that along at that particular point on a smaller time frame? I'm not sure we would have got a nice bar on this. We did. Look at that. Look at that beauty. Absolutely beautiful at that particular point. Where's our 3-to-1 on this? So stop loss below the level, entry above that bar. We had 2 bars there weighted, and then it popped to the upside. So well done, anyone that took that. Really nice trade. Really, really nice trade. So the reason for taking that trade, we had the phase one, we had the phase two. We look at this purple level here. So purple level has been broken a few times, but if we look in a little more detail, it's bounced once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then we'll zoom in here in this area here. 12, 13, and now we're touching here again. So this is the 14th time. Yes, it's been broken numerous occasions, but we've had numerous rejections on this sort of level as well. Yes, I'm classing that as a rejection. Yes, it doesn't touch it, but it came into that area, into that zone, and then sort of came off. This one is probably a bit far from me, but this one here is close enough. So it's come back here, it's hit the floor, and then bounced back up. Now, I would like to be out of this trade before it hits this trend line or this double top. Yes, I think there's more upside in this one than downside. If you look through this whole area, this hasn't really gone down. It's moved sideways, where all the other markets have actually made a lower low. They've dropped, whereas this one has pretty much held its own. So I do think there's more upside in the UK stock market than any of the other ones at the moment. But if the other ones take off, this one will also take off as well. China now has come down to a triple bottom there. Are we looking at this as a buy signal? Well, there is one there, absolutely. There is a buy signal there, entry there, stop loss below it, and absolutely there is a trade there. Is that something that I'm doing? Absolutely not. It's not something that I'm looking at, not something I'm actively chasing. I do think there's more downside than up. I think it's going to come back down to into this area. So it's definitely not something that's on my radar at this present moment. Oil. So we talked about oil bouncing off this level, which it did. Now, we talked about the probabilities of this bouncing, and from looking at a technical standpoint, there was more probability of it coming down to here and then bouncing off this floor to the upside. Now, as you can see, that didn't happen. What happened is it hit this floor and then bounced up. And from the group, I see that there's a few people after taking that. Well done. Keep up the good work. Again, it's not something that I would have taken, but this looks like there's a little more upside. So we talked about potential upsides and which had potential more, oil or gas. And when we look at the both of them, we're looking at this one. This one's at a massive high compared to oil. So oil has had that drop down. So as an investor, as someone who wants to make a little bit of profit, I'm looking at oil more so than gas as an investor. So I'm looking at, if I'm looking at this, there's more upside for me on the likes of oil and gas. So it's where I will be looking to actually jump in and invest, would be here rather than there. Now, the natural gas is a much better trade. It's a much better setup. But for me, it's, as an investment point of view, there's more investments here on the likes of this one. Now, can we trade at this at the moment? Absolutely not. I would like a few things to happen before we actually take a trade on this. I'll just get rid of these. There's a few things I'd like to see happening before we take a trade here. I would like to see this go up a little bit further. I'd like to see this go up maybe one more bullish day, and then I would like to see a pullback into this level here. And if that happens, I'd expect quite a big bounce off that to the upside. And why? Because we have a pretty defined level at that area where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 touches on that. So that would be a really good level for me to be looking at this and then sort of bouncing. And if it touched that, then I'd expect that to pop to the upside. Natural gas. And if we look at natural gas, again, the next trade on this has to be a break and retest here to the upside, or it drop down. So there are the two scenarios. Now, if I'm being honest, the probability wise, there's probably more probability of it coming down to there than going up. But again, it comes down to supply and demand. If there's more demand for it, this will continue popping. But for me, there's more downside on this. If I'm being honest, I don't see any reason for this to continue running. With oil having a better investment opportunity, I don't see why people will be looking at natural gas. But again, why people do things in the markets and what they do is sometimes absolutely extraordinary. So it may or may not happen. We look at wheat. Wheat had come down to that little level down here, that floor that I was looking at. Anyone that took that long off there, well done. You had a little pop to the upside. How much of a pop to the upside this is going to have, who knows? It again comes down to whether people are confident that this will continue running. So we have broken out of that little sort of trend line here with a little rejection, and then it pops back up again. So we have that little phase one, phase two, phase one. Now, I understand that that's not a phase two here on the daily, but that would be a phase two on the 4 hour. So we had the 4 hour phase one, phase two, phase one. And it's now just a matter of whether it'll break these highs. And if it breaks these highs, then we could actually see a little movement to the upside. So before we move over onto the silver and gold, something I wanted to have a look at was OXY. So OXY is something that I preached a little bit about around here, somewhere around here. I said, look, earnings were coming up and I expected the earnings to be good. And anyone who jumped into that somewhere around here should be theoretically now up 25% on this particular call. Now, again, what's the upside on this? Do we expect oil to continue growing over this next quarter? So this is something that you guys have to work out. Are you happy now with your 25% profit on this? Or is it something that we are looking to jump out now, take our profits, and we're happy to run? If we look at this, OXY is, what would I say? It's pretty big rally we've had on OXY from the lows down here when it actually went down to minus $37 a barrel. So from this point, this double bottom, it is now rallied from there. I've held on to OXY since then. I also bought some more OXY at this particular point. So it has ran pretty nicely. So do we think that the market is going to turn, as in that the stock market is going to turn? That's the first thing. So if the stock market turns, this will probably be dragged up with it, the same as every other stock that's in the exchange. Then the second thing then is, do we think we're at the height of oil earnings here, or do we think we can get another quarter of it? Okay, so that's the question you think you have to answer yourself. Is there another quarter of really good earnings? And if there is, we hold on to this for the next quarter. And with the likes of this stock, for me, hold on to it quarter by quarter and ask yourself that question. And if you're pretty confident that we're going to get another good quarter, you hold on to it. If you think, oh, well, next quarter shouldn't be as good, oil prices have dropped, they're actually not producing as much oil anymore, blah, 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 blah. If that's the case, then you take your profit and run here and say, thank you very much. Over onto gold and silver. Silver, we've had a nice little run here, popped up, hit its head, come back down. We wanted that to come back up and hit this sort of break and retest level there. It didn't. So then there was no short here on it for me. So it didn't do what I was expected to do. So for me, there was no trade at that particular point. So for me, this has now to come down into that floor. And if it comes back down to that floor, then we have a potential level where we can bounce. And if that happens, then we have potential upside or a break and retest. Okay, depending on whether we've divergence or convergence at this particular point, that would dictate whether I expect the market to go up or expect it to continue come down. If we look at golds, so gold, there was a nice little trade there. The market did pop down. We did get a second selling day. And then since then, I'm going to pull this out of the way. And then I'm going to pull this out of the way as well. So since then, as we can see, we've had the bar come back down to this floor and it sort of moved sideways. It has sort of stalled. It hasn't done what we expected. We wanted it to come back down to this purple level. So that's the area we wanted to come back down to. And let's see what happens. We are in a bit of profit at the moment on that trade. We're probably 0.5% up at the particular moment. But again, let's see what happens. And let's have a quick look at the dollar index, because that will dictate what silver and gold are going to do. Let's have a quick look at the dollar index. So this is why sort of gold has stopped, because we are at a double top on the dollar index. Look at it. We are at that ceiling. We did talk about a potential change of direction right here at that particular point. It went up and double topped. We didn't quite stop us out. So we took this trade here, didn't quite stop us out. And look, we're now in a little bit of profit on this one. We're now in a little bit of profit. It now looks like it has a little more downside. So the question is that, do you expect the likes of dollar to get weaker and come back down into sort of this level? Or do you expect it to pop back up to the upside, continue with this overall trend? And that will dictate whether you're jumping out of gold and taking that little bit of profit, or whether you're holding on to it because you expect it fully to come back down to here. And that's where the dollar index comes into play. If we are hitting the ceiling and you expect it to break this, then you hold on to your gold trade. If you expect this to come back down to this trend line, then I'd be jumping out of the gold trade. I'd be taking my little bit of profit and I'd be saying thank you very much to the market. Look, everyone, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. Hope you all have a lovely day, and I will speak to you all on Wednesday. Bye-bye.